Welcome everyone back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing a video that's incredibly unoriginal but also quite fun at the same time. That being my reaction to my championship predictions I did at the start of the season. I know the season's not over. I'm not that stupid, okay? That's probably questionable. I mean, Owly, it's Owly's idea. He said I should do a championship reaction. So, you know, shout out to Owly. He's back. He's just been on holiday. If you'd like me to do the Premier League version of this in the near future where I react to those predictions, which are also terrible, then please drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and just let me know in the comments below, because obviously I don't really talk about the Premier League that much, but if you'd like me to do a version of that for this kind of video, then just let me know and I'll do it. But starting with B, standing for Bournemouth, I said they'll be third. They're actually first currently. Not really a surprise that I am pretty much bang on with this one. Obviously, they've been pretty amazing all season. They've had a few hiccups here and there. They were the last team to lose in the division the entire season at home to Preston. Quite a surprising defeat, really. I was a little bit questionable when Scott Parker came in. Is he the right man? And it's a bit of a sideways move, given the fact that Fulham, his old club, are literally going to be one of his rivals to get promoted. But, I mean, it's worked, hasn't it? You know, Bournemouth, you could maybe say they missed out on promotion last year when they probably expected to go up. Maybe that might actually make them go downhill a little bit, but no, they've come back even stronger, haven't they? So they're doing really well. And from one extreme to the other, onto Barnsley, I said 12th. That's terrible. And they're actually 23rd. I expected a drop-off. I think everyone did. 5th was an absolute miracle that they got that in the first place last season, but 23rd. He's really losing Dane Murphy, Ishmael. Obviously, on the pitch, the likes of Moet and DK, or is it DK or Dyke, the winger that had. Is that really that powerful? You know? And the fact that the fans have come back, and they've come back to them being basically back to type. Barnsley struggling at the bottom end of the Championship, but they're not even really putting up a fight. They look nailed on for relegation, which is quite sad given where they were last season. So on to one of the most standard predictions of all time. Birmingham City, I said 15th, they're actually 17th. Essentially, they had a pretty good start for once. Maybe they might actually try and achieve something more than just mid-table mediocrity. But no, that lasted about 5 games, and now look at them, they're back to being mid-table. Most likely, in about April, they'll be playing absolutely incredible again, because they always do at the end of every single season. And I've used this joke before, but it's quite apt. They turn into prime Barcelona. Probably not that far, but you get the point. You know, they turn into a very good side, and you think, great, can they push on next season? And they never do. So this one's quite embarrassing, really. One of the worst ones probably on this list, and there's some pretty terrible ones coming up as well. Blackburn Rovers, I said they'll be 14th. They're actually 3rd. That's a difference of 11 places. The reason why I said they'll be 14th is because they lost Adam Armstrong. I thought that was going to affect them, and Brereton did improve last season, of course, but he wasn't quite on the level he is now. He's already got 19 goals in 23 matches this season. He's a phenomenon in Chile now, and he also got me 10,000 views on the channel, so cheers for that, Ben. They also had quite a poor defence last season, and I didn't really think they did enough to improve it, and I mean, clearly they're doing better because they're 3rd in the league. Whether they stay there or not is a completely different question, because it all, for me, boils down to whether they keep Brereton Diaz, because he could easily go to the Premier League, couldn't he? It's obvious that could happen. And I also do think the talk about the manager in terms of Tony Mowbray, is he still the long-term solution? I don't think he is really, even when they lost 7-0 to Blackburn, they are Blackburn. 7-0 to Fulham. They lost 7-0 to Blackburn. They lost 7-0 to themselves. That makes sense. When they lost 7-0 to Fulham, that was a new low, and everyone was saying, yeah, just get rid of him. They were like 9th at the time, not even doing that badly. But, I mean, for years now, Tony Mowbray feels like he's been on thin ice at Blackburn, and it kind of feels like even at the 3rd, it isn't going to last. On to Blackpool, I said they'll be 20th in the division, and they're actually currently in 13th place, and at times they have been higher than that. They've played some good stuff this season, Blackpool, from what I've seen of it. Of course, the game against Forest, I thought they gave us a really tough game, and we were lucky to win it in ways, because Blackpool could have easily got a draw out of it. Obviously, we took the lead, and I thought they played some great stuff. They really did at times. Obviously, Neil Critchley, only in his 2nd season as a manager. I did my championship manager ratings a few weeks ago. Go and give that video a watch if you haven't already. And I rated Neil Critchley quite highly. And I think long term, if he stays there, who knows what Blackpool could do. I don't see them getting relegated anytime soon. They could at least stable themselves in the Championship for a few years. So this next one is actually bang on correct. Bristol City, I said they'd be 18th, they're actually in 18th. But then again, I'm not really going to take too much credit for that because it is Bristol City. It's not that difficult to predict them in the table, is it, really? I think the best word to describe Bristol City at the moment is just very stale and not really any idea of where they're going. You know, what is their long-term goal? Is it to try and get the playoffs in a few years? Is it just to stay in the Championship, avoid relegation even? It just feels all very, very up in the air. So this one really is one of the absolute worst on the list. Cardiff City. I said they'll be 6th. 6th place. Cardiff. And the 20th. What's going on, lads? How are you making me look so stupid? That's a difference of 14 places. You're rubbing it into yourself, David. That's diabolical. And it's weird because they actually had a relatively good start when we played them. And I'm sorry to keep mentioning Forest, but, you know, it's going to be my first point of reference, isn't it? But when we played them, they were on a really good run of form. They were like 7th in the division. Obviously, we were really low down in the league at the time. And after that game, in fact, they lost 8 straight games in a row. And they look like a completely different team, even from the start of the season. They got absolutely hammered by their arch rival Swansea. They just looked absolutely hopeless. Obviously, that cost Mick McCarthy his job, and ultimately that meant Steve Morison would come in. And he's not really set the world alight, but he's just, from what I can tell, the outside looking in, he's just steadied the ship a little bit. You know, not making them quite as dire as they were before. They should be all right. I mean, I can't see them getting relegated to League One. That would be disastrous if they did. Only I cannot see them getting anywhere near close to 6th place. This next position, honestly, given where they actually are, I don't really think it does their season justice because they have also got a few games in hand. They've had to miss a few games because of COVID outbreaks, but it's Coventry City. I said they'll be 19th. Yeah, that's diabolical. They're actually 10th. They've had stoppages in the season, and obviously their form in general has took a little bit of a hit, and they've dropped down the table. But most of the season they've been in the playoffs, and quite comfortably in the playoffs. I don't think they're going to get them ultimately. I think they probably will finish around where they are now, but a huge progress for Coventry. You know, the first season of the Championship last season in a very long while. I don't know the exact number, but it was a long time since they were last in it, and now they're already trying to battle for the top 6. It's pretty good. This next one's quite complicated to actually talk about, but it's also really quite funny. Derby County, I said 24th. Obviously, they're in 24th. Yeah, that's incredibly funny. It is a little bit frustrating as a Forest fan whenever I see Derby do actually win a game that they act like they're on a promotion charge. But, I mean, obviously, they're going to try and get every win they can get at the moment. But, particularly Sky, they big them up a ridiculous amounts. Lads at the bottom of the league, and they're not going to stay up. To be fair to Derby, being unbiased for once, I do think a team in their situation that actually have done relatively well. You've had a fight in most games. You've lost a few super matches, but you've also won a lot of games where you thought probably wouldn't do that, like Bournemouth, West Brom, Blackpool. You know, you've beaten some good sides, but even without the points deduction, you wouldn't be good enough to really be breaking any records, would you? So, yeah. So on to Fulham. They're actually 2nd when I said they'd be in 1st place. That's nothing too, you know, disastrous. Obviously, they've been first plenty of times this season. They've scored a ridiculous amount of goals, 50+ goals at the halfway stage of the season. Mitrovic is on 22 goals, I believe. It's just insane stats, and you just know that they're gonna go up to the Premier League, and Mitrovic will get about 3 goals in the whole year. Obviously, Bournemouth and Fulham have both dropped off a little bit, and they've somehow done quite an incredible job of bottling such an amazing gap between 2nd and 3rd. It's now just 1 point. I mean, could they bottle it completely? I think ultimately both of them will get top 2, but yeah, obviously you're going to get blips, but it's a little bit concerning, I suppose. This next team is really, really interesting because I said they'd be 23rd, they're actually in 6th place, and I'm going to watch them play tomorrow. That is Huddersfield Town, so it's going to be a really, really interesting game. That obviously you're most likely seeing this on the day we play Huddersfield, but I'm recording this the day before. But I'm really keen to see what they're all about. Obviously, I've seen them a few times this season, but I haven't watched them really closely, of course. The reason why I said they'd be low down is because they conceded the most goals in the Championship last season, and obviously I'm wrong because they're 6th, but I didn't really feel they did enough to actually improve that. I think if you were to name a few reasons why Huddersfield are doing better this season is because, I mean, really, they probably shouldn't be battling relegation. They should be about mid-table. They are overachieving, but I think they do deserve to be where they are. Sorban Thomas, I think he's been a huge reason for that. Obviously getting him from non-league about a year ago, and now he's one of their best players. Josh Karoma's done well again this season, and I think really a big one really is their manager. You know, it's his second season as a manager. Obviously, Carlos Corbejan. Last season he was coming in to kind of an unknown quantity, and no crowds and that. It was a tough situation to come into. He's now got a whole year's worth of experience, and I think that's helped him. On to Hull City, as of the 21st, they're actually in 19th. Obviously, for quite a bit of time this season they were struggling, but recently, before they played Forest, obviously they won 4 of their 6 games before that, so they really did pick up and they drew the other 2. So, I mean, fair play to them, they're doing well at the moment. And Keane Lewis Potter, I've got to mention him, what an absolute baller he is. I don't normally look at the opposition in awe, I'm just focusing on Forest whenever I watch Forest play, particularly, at home. I generally thought, wow, he's a good player, we've got to be careful about him. And he's got Premier League future written all over him. Luton Town then, I said they'll be 9th. They're actually in 14th place. And that isn't too bad really, because at times this season Luton have been 9th. They've been in the playoffs even at times. So it's not too bad. I don't really know what to make of them. They're just slowly but surely getting better and better every single season. Obviously, they've definitely had some ups and downs this season. Like they've lost 5-0 to Birmingham when Birmingham were doing well at the start of the year, and they've won 5-0 against Coventry. So that basically sums up the Championship, really, doesn't it? And that sums up them. They've just been a bit up and down all season. Middlesbrough, honestly, this could have been very different, because if I was reacting to this even a few weeks ago, I would have been looking a little bit too optimistic. But now, arguably, I should have put them a bit higher, because I said they'll be 7th. They're actually in 5th place, and that's the highest they've been all season. Obviously, under Neil Warnock, they were quite poor at times, but they also did win quite a few good games as well. They were just very, very up and down. And obviously Chris Wilder, he's definitely finally got them a bit of consistency, and they've got some great players in that team. They really have. I don't think they're going to go up just yet. I think next season definitely they could be right up there again, but so far for the rest of the season it would just really be about just finding their identity again, really, because I kind of feel like it was lost under Woodgate and kind of to a point Warnock. Millwall, again, quite an easy one to predict really. I said they'll be 12th. They're actually currently in 12th. Another one that I've got correct there. I haven't got many correct, so I'm going to savour that. But obviously Millwall, at the start of the season, they actually didn't even start out that well. They were the draw specialists, and they drew a ridiculous amount of matches to start it off. And they've just been in and out of the playoffs. They've been in the playoffs a handful of times, I think, throughout the season. But mainly they've been around about 6th to 12th the whole year. So, I mean, fair play to them. They're just doing what they normally do, really. So I'm not going to talk about this team for too long, because I obviously mention them an awful lot normally. But Forest, I said we'd be 13th, well actually 9th, and we've been lower than that most of the season. We've been there a lot of the season as well, and obviously now we're above that. So it's been a very, very up and down season, of course. First 7 games were diabolical, and obviously Steve Cooper's completely turned us around, and that basically sums us up, really. So Peterborough, I said they'd be 22nd. They're actually in 22nd. So another one I got correct just there. Obviously their away form has been pretty dreadful. They've only won 1 on the road all season away at Hull. At home, of course, they've got a few good results to beat the likes of Derby, Birmingham and Millwall. So they've got some good results at home. But overall, I just don't see them surviving, because they've conceded the most goals in the league. They conceded 44 goals in half a season. And they just don't score enough. And I think that is as simple as that, really. They're not clinical enough, and they're not good enough, really. Preston. I mean, what do I say about Preston North End? They're just there, aren't they? Like, they're just there. They're just happy to be in the Championship, doing very, very little. I think the best way to describe them really is stale. There was zero direction with McAvoy in charge. Obviously, he was only the manager for about 6 months. Now they've got Ryan Lowe from Plymouth, and I hate it when managers leave halfway through a season. It's just, especially when they go to a club that are doing nothing. It's just stay at Plymouth. You may as well. But I don't really know what to say about Preston. I mean, I've even said their position. I said they'd be 17th, they're actually 15th, but it's basically the same for Preston, isn't it? QPR, I said they'd be 5th, and they're actually in 7th. That's nothing to be ashamed of. They've been in 5th plenty of times and higher this season. Obviously, of late, they've kind of been dropping off. They've also had COVID issues. They've had to, their game against Bournemouth was their first game in about 2 weeks. So, and they lost to Stoke before that. These are rivals for promotion. So they're kind of slipping up a little bit. They've also conceded a few too many goals late on. One of them against Forest, of course. But they've got some good wins. They've got some great wins. In fact, the entire year has been a brilliant year overall for QPR. They've been one of the best teams in the country for form. Reading, I said 16th, they're actually 21st. Obviously, they've had a points deduction and a transfer embargo, so they've already got that to contend with. It does feel like a continuation from last season. Obviously, last season they were quite good most of the time, but they had a really poor end to it, only winning a handful of games, and it does feel like that form's continued into this year and just got gradually worse, and they're kind of back to type, but they shouldn't really be 21st. They're better than that. Sheffield United, this one's such an interesting one to talk about. I said 4th, they're actually 11th, and if I'd done this just a couple of weeks ago, maybe a bit more than that, 4th would look really stupid because they've been relegation at times. I do feel it's a bit harsh getting rid of Jokanovic, but the thing I cannot get my head around, and I think I've already said it a couple of times, why get rid of him and then appoint your assistant manager, or it was a youth coach or something, I apologise, I don't know exactly what his role was, but the point is, you appoint someone from within the club already on a 5-year contract. I mean, please make that compute. I know obviously he's done very well since he's come in. They've won 5 in a row, Sheffield. They beat Fulham. They're doing really well now. But Sheffield should be doing that. They've got such a stacked squad. Last season, they were in a major losing mentality. You know, even if they won, they probably felt like it was a huge shock to win a game. And, you know, it's hard to get out of that. And I think at the moment they are doing that. On to Stoke City. I said 8th. They're in 8th currently as well. So 0 places out. Of course, at times they have been higher than that. So, you know, maybe that's a little bit harsh that I put them in 8th in the first place. But Stoke, I mean, I don't really know what to make of them. It feels like probably the best way to put it is they're actually meeting expectations now, because every year that they've been back in the Championship, they've underperformed a lot. They're doing well, and I think they probably will get the playoffs. Swansea City, wow, what a drop-off. I said they'd be 10th, they're actually in 16th, and of course the last 2 seasons, they have been a playoff level side, and the fact that they at this position, and it kind of feels like it's just acceptant. And I don't want to keep mentioning Forest, but it does feel very similar to last season with us. 2 years of being right up there, and then you're just mediocre. And obviously they lost Cooper, they lost Ayew, they lost Lowe, they've lost Roberts, Woodman, Gay. So much personnel has gone from that Swansea side, and obviously the likes of Jimmy Patterson have done pretty well. He came in from Bristol for nothing. Joel Pereira, I'll say that wrong, haven't I? He's done pretty well. He's already been linked with moves away to the Premier League, and yeah, that's not really encouraging, is it? And I don't really see them doing anything at all this season, and keeping Matt Grimes was absolutely huge. West Brom, it feels very, very toxic at West Brom right now, even though obviously they're doing pretty well, 4th in the league. It just feels really, really toxic. Like, that isn't good enough. They want to be in the top 2. I completely get why it feels toxic, because they play some pretty dreadful football. Drawing 0-0 with Barnsley, drawing 0-0 with Forest, drawing 0-0 with Derby, losing to Derby. I mean, that deserves relegation, quite frankly, losing to Derby. But other than that, you know, I think part of it is down to Ishmael. And, you know, they want him out. West Brom fans want him out. He isn't the long-term solution. And, you know, I didn't see much of Barnsley last season in detail, but obviously they did really well. But from what I can gather, it's not like they were doing it in style. They were playing, you know, free-flowing, beautiful attacking football. It was just, you know, they were just getting wins. And that's fine when you're Barnsley and you're not expecting to do that. But when you're West Bromwich Albion and you're expected to be even in the Premier League, to be honest, you can't really get away with it. That, you know, it feels like these days in football you have to play a certain style for your fans to be happy, even if you're winning. So that was my reaction to my Championship predictions I did at the start of the season. Some pretty dreadful ones in there, also some ones that are pretty much bang on as well. If you'd like me to do this for the Premier League, like I said earlier, please just let me know in the comments below. Obviously I don't tend to do much top flight content on this channel, because I mean I tend to focus on Forest, so it makes sense to then, if I'm going to branch away from that, talk about the Championship. But hopefully next season I can talk about the Premier League more, because Forest will be there. So, you know, it would make sense, wouldn't it? In reality, we probably won't go up. So, that's a joke. Thanks for watching, everyone. You Reds.